All right, so today's devotional comes from Romans 5:8. Romans 5:8, where it says, "But God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." 3 words: love, still, and died. God showed his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Now, I think we all have different reactions to that verse. As a Christian, of course, it fills me with this urge to love Jesus back because he loved me first. This urge to live for Christ because he died for me first. That's all there, so please don't doubt my faith when I say the next phrase. Another reaction from a purely economic business point of view about this verse is, that is so unfair. That is so unfair, right? We live in a generation and a time where we're addicted to equality. We're addicted to fairness. But one thing in the world that we all, as humans, agree is the most powerful force of good in the world, love, is the most unfair thing also in the world. I'm not talking just about unrequited love. There's that, right? But here, God loved us. He took a hit first. Love involves one side taking the risk first and possibly losing everything, in this case dying, so that that love might be requited one day. There is nothing quite as unfair as this, economically, right? Usually, economically, from a business point of view, we're going to talk and negotiate, and we're absolutely sure that the other side will keep his promise, and then we pay the price. And we meet in the middle, 50-50. That's fair. But if anything is going to teach us that business, life, the economy is not fair, it is love. And it is the love of God, the love of Christ that shows us to be like him, to love like him. We have to be willing to risk. We have to be willing to be the first one to lose, if that's what it takes to build a kingdom of love. We're addicted to equality and all of that, and it's a very, very misleading philosophy. Why? Because if we want everybody to be absolutely equal and fair in this world, nobody is going to take ownership for that spearhead of growth, economically, socially, philosophically, theologically. If a boy and a girl, they want to date, but each one, before making a move, wants absolute assurance that the other one will respond in kind, we will not have much dating in this world. Love and seeking love, giving love, is one of the most unfair games, unfair things in this world, and that's what we are called to do. We've been looking at the 5 environments, the 5 layers of the business environment. And for the last week, we talked about things that are kind of out of our control. They're there, right? But we can't really control it that much. From this week on, we have control. And someone asked this in the group chat, right? So what are we building? Was that you, Amelia? No. Who asked that question? I can't remember. It was a great question. So what are we building? You know, you have to build where you won battles or you will lose the war. So what are we building? In one word, it is love. We're building love. in this world, which means Christian businesses have to be willing to strategically take hits, but strategically. Don't be crazy and say, okay, I have to love my neighbor like myself, and so I'll give everything to my neighbor, unstrategically, unplanned. The Bible is termed very, very wisely. That verse itself, if you say, okay, I'm going to destroy my own life, my own bank account, so that I can love my neighbor as myself, your bar for loving your neighbor is pretty low, right? You have to, God is saying, if you're going to love your neighbor as yourself, you also have to love yourself as your neighbor. If it's the equal sign in between, right? So don't be stupid about it, but you have to do it. That is how the world becomes better, becomes more Christ-like, and more redeemed for us having existed as a Christian business. Life is not fair. It has never been meant to be fair. Christ showed us that it's not fair. And that's why love has value. If it is a fair world, we're living in a world of equations and formula and policies. We're not living in a world where love has value, sacrifice has value, and the fruit and labor of love has value. So, suck it up, get behind it. It's an unfair world, but that's why we need more Christ-like businesses, Christ-like figures. And that is us. Amen? All right. Okay, so for this week, our motto, we might not mention it a lot, but you're going to see the word love come out from time to time. Because that is literally, if you have control, and you will have control in the central three layers, think, WWDJ, what would Jesus do? Or was it JD, sorry. Yeah? He would love. Okay? But before I go ahead, I promised you last week that I would finish a few more, let's say, social, geopolitical, economic trends that I think is very important for Christian entrepreneurs in Africa, in Uganda. Okay, so we'll go through that very quickly, if that's okay. All right? Okay, so the 5 layers. And we're going to finish macro environment before we go into this week's topic. As you know, PESTEL, political, economic, social, cultural, technological, environmental, and legal factors. Now, there is so much to discuss here that, of course, a 6-day course on strategy and the kingdom of God is not going to cut it. And we won't cover everything. But I've picked out trends that I think that relate and are important for all of us here in Uganda today in the 21st century. So we talked about inflation, we talked about prices, we talked about Ukraine and all of that last week. There are a few more that I want to share with you today. Trend 1, 3, okay? Trend 1 is today we are living in an age, in a world where there is a change in the definition of economic power. And this is very important for African countries, especially that have a lot of youth in them. Number 1, for a long time, economic value of a country was measured by GDP, gross domestic product. For countries with a lot of trade, it would be GNP, gross national product, right? But that has changed today. I don't know if you've noticed, but what really is at the core of economic power today is not just the population of the country, but the youth population. A country that has a lot of young people, even if it is not financially that powerful, holds the future. Why? We'll discuss this in a minute, okay? But just so you know, right? We're not talking about population per se. Obviously, they're related. If you have a lot of youth, you would have a lot of population. But the key here is young population. And you can see, I mean, this is no big secret anymore. Africa is literally the continent with most yellow. It's the youth of the world is concentrated in Africa. I just wanted to make sure that we get the momentousness of that fact, okay? There is one here. Is that Azerbaijan? One of the stans, maybe. Turkmenistan or something, right here. But it's Africa. That's the center. Now, why is youth more powerful than GDP today? If you look at the breakdown of the economic power of the country, here on the y-axis you have the population age, or age brackets, right? 9 to 10, that's where Sky is, right? 10 to 9, etc., until 100 and plus, and there are people who are 100 plus years old who look like they're 80, right? And then the 4 drivers of economic power that is produced by the population: consumption, production, income, and wealth. Income and wealth is different. Income is how much you're making now. Wealth is how much you have stored up, right? How does this look normally? Between 0 and 19, your consumption, a person's consumption is very high. As a beneficiary, you're not making anything. You're not producing anything. You have no income. By production, by the way, I don't mean personal income. I mean for the economy, right? You don't have any economic production value at this age. You bring smiles, right? Laughter, all of that. But in terms of economic power or input, 0. Income, 0. Wealth, 0. But you're a high consumer. We talked about inflation last week. Inflation hinges on consumption, not just production. Production without consumption is not economic product, right? If you have a lot of production but no one to buy it, then there is no cash flow. So they're both important. And then you get into your 20s to your 40s. This is where you're making money, but you have production for the economy. 20 to 29, I think your production is medium. Right? It's not exactly high. I mean, those of you who are in your 20s, forgive me, but if you go into a large organization, let's say as an intern, you're learning, right? I'm guilty. When I was in Citibank and I was managing divisions, there would be all these bright-eyed interns coming in from university to work with Citibank for 2 weeks, a month. Do I look at them as, finally, we have more people to do my work? Not quite. I look at them like, now I have to teach them, I have to tell them what to do. They're going to come with 1,000 questions a minute. And so what do? I say, okay, here is 1,000 pages, go copy it, right? And there's a term for that, copy machine interns, right? At least you can put it on your CV, but the amount of production or value you're going to produce, the expectation is pretty low. That's in your 20s, but because of that, your production goes up. Your income is medium, etc. And then 50 to 69, your consumption slows down. 20 to 49, this is where you're going to college, right? You're consuming. You're going to college, you're buying hopefully a house or a car, you're getting married, and you have to buy baby stuff, you have to buy clothes. By the time you are 50 and above, your fashion is not that core of your concern. You slow down on your consumption. You've already bought your house, hopefully, right? Or at least Yeah. What about 50 to 70? Hopefully, if you're going to buy a house, it should be around there, right? So it's already done. You have your car. You're not really doing things either. You're not going to travel as much. Okay, you're not going to be like, oh, I want to try out this restaurant, that restaurant. Oh, there's a new sports in Jinja. I'm going to go try. No, it slows down. Your consumption slows down. And your production also kind of slows down, right? A lot of people retire around here, 65 and so forth. Your income, though, is probably the highest it will ever be, right? Just before we retire, your salary is at its peak. Your wealth for the rest of your life is higher than anybody else or any other age range. At least that's how it usually goes, right? But your consumption drops almost to zero production income. That is going to change from country to country, from demographic to demographic, but there's a general rule around this. And you can see this trend. Green goes like that. Your value in the economy, financially and economically, goes up as you age. So, what is Japan like? This is the Japan population pyramid. We call it the pyramid. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this before, right? Age, this is the age bracket, like this, right? Horizontally. We have no babies. We have almost no babies. Last year, in a population of 128 million people, Japan, there were only 800,000 babies born that year. There's something wrong with Japanese people. They're not getting married and they're not having babies. I wonder why. If you guys can tell me, I'll listen. I'll pay you to tell me why. And then you can see that a lot of people are up here now, right? Their consumption and production, this place, this is economic value. This is not economic value. Okay, this is where you actually draw money away from the economy. The left side is where you're putting value and money into the economy. The majority of Japan's population is sucking economic value, not inputting economic value. So even if Japan is like the third biggest economy in the world, it's not going to last very long at this rate. I will go home and try to have more babies. I have to get married first. Yeah, Operation Get Juno a Wife. USA. Similar to Japan, but at least the pyramid is a little bit thicker here. There are more people here producing for the economy, right? And if this is high, a lot of it trickles this way, right? Your children, your grandchildren. Germany, same. There aren't pyramids, these economies. And these three are some of the biggest economies in the world: USA, Japan, Germany. All right, Uganda. Ooh. Damn, right? This is future economic power right here, the youth population. In the next 40 to 50 years, you're going to see high consumption and production in Uganda. Uganda is actually in incredible shape. If you look at Kenya, it's similar, but it's shrinking compared to Uganda. Okay? Youth population is the next definition of economic power. And you guys are in a very good position. So if you look at the continent, this is the projection of the population. China, India, and Africa have about the same population size today, right here. And then in 40 years, which is that graph you just saw, 0 to 40, in 40 years, Africa will have as many people as China and India combined. Okay, so you think, oh, the more babies we have, the poorer the country is. You have to think again. Okay, maybe immediately in the next 40 years, possibly, but within that 40 years, Japan, United States, and so forth are in direct risk of losing their economic power. And you guys are in the cusp of gaining it, okay? And another thing that we really need to look at, trend 2, is that these young people in the world today, they're not the same as my generation. I'm 42. The people who are 20-something, yeah, I'm 42. I see a lot of surprised faces. Okay, 20-somethings, they are very different creatures. And that gives way to trend number 2, a change in definition of political power and social influence. What is a real strong political figure? What is a strong social influencer? That has changed between my generation and the people who are 20-something today. Just look at Espoir, right? He probably doesn't like even to have a collar, right? What's cool for Espoir's age is new to me. And I'm not going to lower my dignity by trying to catch up. I will be me. But okay, a good way to test this trend is to look through history. Okay? What are the heads of state or the most powerful people of that age or that era wearing? Who knows who this is? Shakespeare? No. This is Alexander the Great. Okay, who got that right? Nice. Alexander the Great. What is he wearing? Because if you're the head of state, that is, at that time, the definition of political power. It's the definition of what's cool. Right? What is he wearing? Armor. He's on a war horse. He's carrying a spear. Back in those days, the definition of power and social influence was military. How many people you can kill. How great of a warrior you are, right? And then it's been like this for a long time in the world, or it was like this for a long time. Fast forward all the way, hundreds of years. Who is this? Caesar. Which Caesar? Salad? Julius, yes, Julius Caesar, right? Again, military. That's what he's wearing. All right, go on to, I'm not going to ask you to guess who this Muzungu is. Louis XIV, right? He built the Palace of Versailles. What's he wearing? A blanket. A sleeping bag. And he hasn't cut his hair for a long time. Okay. I love this class. You guys are so unpredictable. Okay, he's wearing a blanket. Okay, but okay, going back, what is the definition of power? It's no longer military, obviously. What would you say it is? Fashion. Comfort, luxury, decadence, riches, wealth. It's not military anymore, right? And so you see trends. He built the Palace of Versailles. Not a spear in sight, not a horse in sight, or a sword or arrow in sight. It's all just bling, right? That is cool. That is power. That's a definition back in those days. How about today? Not today, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. What are they wearing? Suits. So what would you say 10 years ago was the definition of power and social influence? Elegance, diplomacy, politics, not quite. Who wore suits before the politicians did? Businessmen. It was trade, commerce. That's cool. That was 10 years ago, right? The capitalists, the people who know how to make money, who work hard, right? They're committed. They have a vision, and they keep going for it. They build a business Empire, Rockefellers, Chryslers, all those people. That was cool. But you notice it's a little bit outdated because this was 10 years between that. It's not today. Merkel is not there anymore, right? Theresa May is not there anymore. In fact, there are a few people still there, and questionably so. How about today? When I was teaching 5 years ago, I would have been standing in front of you with a suit and a tie. Joshua will confirm that. I was always wearing a suit and tie because I thought that was cool. I thought that was the way to, get your attention. Today, not quite. Why? Because these young people are different now. These young people are different now. Even the businessmen have changed. Even the politicians have changed. What is cool today, as of now, is easy, comfort, but it's different kind, right? But also, he's not wearing this just to be easy and comfortable. Maybe him, but you know who this is, right? Zelensky. Why is he wearing that? That was the definition of power. He stood in front of the US House of Commons, Joint Assembly, like that. What's the statement? What's the power statement, the social influence statement he's trying to make? Sorry? Just as I am. Calm and in control. Really? There's more here. He's the president of Ukraine. Well, okay, so his common people are fighting, right? It is important for the leader to relate with the middle income class today. The middle income class in Ukraine are fighting a war. To get their support and to rally the troops, increase their morale, he dresses like them. This guy too, starting with Steve Jobs, casual is cool. Why? Because Apple products, they're not meant to just sell to the elite class, right? They're meant to sell to the middle income class, not the lower class of income, but the middle income class. You got to identify with that. And then they got so powerful that became the new definition of cool. Today, the young people like this. They don't like this. This is a bit stuffy today. Today, we are in a different definition of power and social influence. The middle income class today is gaining incredible power. And where is the next middle income class of the world going to be concentrated in? Obviously, Africa. Today, Africa's population is about 1.4, give and take, billion people. By 2060, again, that's the magic number, 40, they're getting the middle income class, that's the middle bubble, is going to be almost the size of Africa's total population today. You're going to have 1.1 to 1.2 billion middle income class people in 40 years because of that pyramid in the middle income class. And the leaders, political leaders, business leaders have to appeal here to have real power. What does that say for Africa? You don't have to wear suits, praise the Lord, right? But also, it's much easier today. The barriers of political power and so forth, at least superficially, are much lower today. You don't have to be all the way up here in your suit and tie. You can be wearing a t-shirt. You can be Andrew Tate. You can be a social media influencer. And you're going to have millions and millions of views. Did you have to go through school, university, master's, PhD to get there? No, you just went on TikTok and upchucked your how I woke up this morning. And you're there. You know, the young people, they're like, I want to be on a boat. They're on a boat. You know, the barriers have changed today, which means for Africa, you have much better chance in this particular respect of influencing the world for Christ and also gaining populist political power than I did or my father did or my grandfather did. The hoops, the barriers are much lower today. What does that mean as a kingdom business, as a kingdom person, right? Think about that. Last one today is change in definition and source of foreign aid. This is very, very pertinent for Africa, of course. Development aid, in a nutshell, are these 7 things, right? Official development assistance, ODA, right? Philanthropic giving, charities, financial support, grants, scholarships, nonprofit projects, like the flyover, subsidized projects, like the Entebbe Highway. It's not completely sponsored, right? But it's almost zero interest rate, and it was the most expensive highway in Africa, right? So, in the world? No. Did someone in the world? I have to check that. Really? No. I drove across it in about 40 minutes.
They say it's the most expensive per kilometer.
Oh, per kilometer. Well, that might. Okay. In the world.
In Uganda, in the whole world, Uganda, like per kilometer.
Wow. Okay. Let me check that. That would be astounding. I have to ask Mr. Gugu. So in development aid, for a long time, it has started primarily with the Christian West. Yeah, nobody really would do this, give charitably, philanthropically, without asking return. That started with kind of like the missionary movement from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. It's evolved. Today there are lots of strings attached. It's become an industry, but it is changing today. Number one, Christians in the West are declining, right? So Christian giving the forecast is there's going to be a very slow decline from the West. And if your NGO or your business depends on American, European, Nordic funding, the magic number is 40. If you plan to live for another 40 years, you should look into that. You should start looking at reshuffling your sources of income. 40 years, guys, is the magic number that we need to think about strategically and macroeconomically. So Christian giving is going to be on a slow decline. Some short-term reasons would be COVID. It's changed the way people travel. The number of Americans and Europeans coming here, even though COVID is kind of behind us, has definitely decreased tremendously. And you know, if you've done fundraising, that unless you're face-to-face, it doesn't have the same dollar effect. You can't do that on Zoom the same way you can face-to-face. And so COVID's dampening of the travel industry has definitely also lent to this decline. Last year, okay, not all, you guys weren't here. We had 3 big investors that said they were going to come to our investment fair for the last cohort. One was National Christian Foundation, a $5.3 billion fund, right? They were going to send their representatives here. Another one was Impact Fund. They wanted to send, they're like a $500 million fund. They were going to come. They all canceled last minute. Now, because Avoda has a strong relationship with them, they still invested into our businesses. But imagine if we didn't, and they didn't travel, they never got to meet anybody. It wouldn't have happened. So those are some short-term reasons that it's in a slow decline, Christian giving. Long-term reasons would be decrease in Christian population in the West, and also, therefore, income, Christian income in the West and Christian wealth in the West. Trend 2, Western secular aid, not just Christian aid, is also going to face a slow decline. Also because of COVID and the travel restrictions that changed our habits, but it also has to do with US political instability. The US is no longer seen as the superpower, the undisputed superpower in the world. To be an undisputed superpower, you need 3 things. 1 is military supremacy. Number 2, economic supremacy. And 3rd, political/moral supremacy. For a long time, whatever the United States does is the good guys, right? And they lost it somewhere along the way. America is seen with suspicion. America is seen to be very corrupt these days. And so they're losing superpower status. And that would also mean America, the biggest source of Western secular aid, is also going to be on the decline. Europe is following in the same trajectory. But it's not all doom and gloom. One thing is going up in terms of charitable giving and source of funds. And that's East Asian secular aid, not Christian aid. We don't have that many Christians in Asia, but these countries, it's increasing phenomenally. The money going from East Asia into Africa is skyrocketing. Not all for benevolent purposes. A lot of it is really just strict business. A lot of it may be a little bit more nefarious, but the dollar amount is climbing. These are the 3 countries that are increasingly putting money into Africa, East Asia. Compared to the West, their strength comes from the fact that they have a different history. Number 1, there is no history of colonization with Africa. There's no dirt in history between these 3 countries and African countries, unlike a lot of the Western countries, right? There's almost no conflict in history. Different language, okay? English and French used to be the language of aid, but today, language comes with a lot of burden. Money speaks louder than words these days. Unfortunately, too, but just give us the money. I don't need to hear about your philosophy. Today, the youth have the shortest attention span in the world. 15 seconds and they scroll. Right? 5 seconds and they scroll. We're not a word-based generation anymore, or not us, the young ones coming up after us in the next 40 years. Different language is actually helpful. Different culture, especially when it comes to money, I think that is helpful in that it's not straight up charity anymore for a lot of these deals. There are business strings attached. Different agendas that are driving Asian countries to put money into Africa. For example, China, we've already talked about China and its goals. Korea is the only one in East Asia that still follows sort of a traditional Christian charitable, philanthropic giving pattern. And that is because there is still a huge number of Christians in Korea, South Korea. Some say 30%. That's Tim Keller. You probably all know Tim Keller, with some of the largest church leaders of largest churches in Korea. And Korea is very Christian. So today, if you look at Asians in Uganda, they're either Chinese or Korean. And if they're Korean, they're probably missionaries, Christians. If you see a Japanese person, I really have no idea what the Japanese are doing here. But they are here. Is it business? Selling cars? We'll talk about that in a minute, but funny how most of the Japanese cars being bought in Uganda, the money is paid to not Japan. They're second-hand or third-hand. If you buy straight from Japan, yes, it goes to Japan, but a lot of it is coming from China, from India, Toyotas that went there and then came here. But we'll talk about that value chain later. today, in fact. And Japan, I know all of you can read that. It says, 支援から商売へ, transitioning from aid to business. That was the catchphrase given by JICA this year, one of our customers here at Avoda, clients, right? This was August last year at TCAD, the Tokyo International Conference for African Aid, and our Prime Minister pledged $30 billion in African development over the next 3 years. This has never happened before. East Asia, aid from East Asia is on the rise. So do think about that as you work with us in Avoda. Yeah, I hope you can tap into it. Most of our strategic clients are in Japan or Singapore and so forth. So if you're thinking about business with Asia and especially Japan, you're in the right place, okay? So I'll just close with this on the PESTLE. Uganda needs more homegrown, revenue-making businesses that can do business with East Asia. Language differences aside. Is Vincent here? Okay, so Vincent, who's one of our staff, he emails the government of Japan in Japanese. I never taught him Japanese. He just uses a translate software. And he's making money for us, you know? Times have changed. All I have to do is help him write sentences in English that translate well into Japanese. Give him a template, he puts in whatever he needs, translate it, it's 3 seconds, boom, send. You can, and language differences are no longer as big a barrier. And you need more startups that don't rely on grants, but learn to make real revenue, because that's what Asia looks for. It's not the same as the West anymore. We are looking for business partnerships. Okay? Good. So we're done with that. I don't know why this is not working anymore. Oop. Okay. So PESTLE, many, many more trends that you need to be aware of. But these three I thought I'd share with you today because they're very, very, very important for Africa, and especially Christians in Africa. So we're done with the kingdom layer and the macro environment layer. And I promised you, as we get closer to the center, technicality increases. Today, we're entering the 3 layers where your decisions and actions start having direct influence and impact on your business and other players. Okay? And we talked about love this morning. This is where business, Christian businesses, can create love. The love of Christ. Okay? But it gets technical because now you're in control. You need frameworks. And in these 3 today, we go into the industry layer. And if you look at the rightmost shelf, you'll see this book, Competitive Strategy, by Michael E. Porter. I think a lot of you know Michael Porter's 5 Forces. That is the definition of the industry layer. The industry layer is made up of 5 forces, which Michael E. Porter, a professor at Harvard, defined. He's still alive today. Okay? And he's one of the people that has made an immense impact in the business academia world. Right? Okay, so in the industry layer, we're back again. New chessboard, new game. While the other games are going on, in this layer, who are you, where are you, etc. And because it gets technical from here, this is extremely important to know exactly who you are, where you're going, who you're facing, and who are your allies, today and tomorrow, and 40 years from now. Okay? Michael Porter's 5 forces go like this. You have the red in the middle is your industry, right? If you are a car bondyard, then other bondyards, that's in the red in the middle, your competitive environment, right? Competition within your industry. And then you have suppliers who supply the cars. You have buyers who buy the cars. And then you have threats of new entrants Okay, and we'll discuss each of these little by little today. And threat of substitutes. And before we define it, I just want you to know these 5 forces shape the competitiveness of your industry. The higher the competitiveness, the more profitable. Yes, overall, but not necessarily for you. Okay, so who are you? The most profitable industries in the world tend to be oil and so forth, right? But the profit margins are so paper thin because it is so competitive. The biggest cost absorbers would be like airlines. Uganda Airlines, right? It's a huge cost, right? Because it is a very competitive industry, though, the margins are low or negative, right? So just because it's super competitive doesn't mean that you are going to be profitable. It means that industry will be profitable, but the more competitive, the more players, and so your margin may decrease. Depends on who you are and where you are, who your allies are and who you're facing, who your enemy is. And then the higher the competitive intensity means, higher profitability for the industry, like we just discussed, all right? But not necessarily for you. And this one, the last one, any of these 5 forces can kill you. If your buyers quit on you, you're dead. If your suppliers say, nah, I don't like him, and there are not enough other suppliers, you're dead. If someone comes in and takes your business, you're dead. Threat of substitutes, we'll describe the difference between threat of new entrants and substitutes, but basically, if someone can say, okay, I don't like cars anymore, there's another form of transportation that I like, I'm switching, then you're dead, okay? But all of these forces also work together to give you profit. This is why it's a chess game. So, how? All right, thank you. We'll proceed, and hopefully, if you still have questions by the end of today, do ask. But I'll go through one at a time, okay? Let's talk about competition within your industry first, the middle one. Okay? Under it, we have 3 main sub-forces. This is one of the 5 forces. There are 3 main sub-forces under this. Number 1 is how many players are there, right? Obviously. The larger the number of players, the tougher the competition, the smaller the margin, right? It's just how many slices of a pie, right? Number 2 is growth of market need. Remember, we discussed this. Need and market need, i.e. demand, are different, right? So the growth, not market need, the growth of market need. Because if there is market need, but there's no growth of that demand, the more profitable that industry is, the more players will come in, the smaller your slice of the pie, right? It's simple mathematics. So remember, it's the growth of market demand, not just market demand. Unfortunately, in Uganda, we have a lot of businesses that are operating even before that stage where there's no real market demand. And they hope to survive. You're not. Yeah, you are. But in the next 40 years, we got to change, because not only is there no market need or demand for that product, a lot of you are depending on Western aid, donors, and that's going to dry up. So it's time to really accept that the world is completely changed, and it will continue changing rapidly in the next 40 years. Okay, the slower growing the market, the tougher the competition. Yep, where there is balance, competition will be moderate. Balance means, okay, so for example, let's take Airtel, MTN. It's pretty balanced, right? And so the competition is moderate for them. Not for other people, but it's moderate for them. But where there is more supply than what the market needs or is willing to pay, competition increases. You're following me, right? It's very simple. Where there is more market need and then supply, competition decreases. Simple supply and demand equilibrium. And then this is kind of PESTEL or overlapping with PESTEL, but external pressures can cause your life or death, your profit or loss in the competitive industry. External pressures like trade unions, government policies thrown into processing equipment can be imported into Uganda for free. Now, if you're in the processing business, that gives you an almost unfair advantage compared to other businesses that need to pay tax to do what you're doing. Monopolies, like we discussed, Airtel and MTN, okay? And, but that's all child's play. I think you all know that very well. What people pay less attention to in the competitive industry, who are you, who are your enemies, right, is actually not your industry per se, but your business segment. Your business segment. What does that mean? So this goes a lot of you have, how many of you own businesses? Okay. Do you sell one product or service, or do you sell multiple? Multiple. Each one of them is a business segment. And they have different competitors. They have different suppliers and buyers. Okay, that's what we sometimes don't realize. They're like, okay, so you have a lot of competition in your business? Yeah. Which business are you in? Consulting. Who are you exactly? Who is your competition? Where are you? Okay. What do you sell? Who are your main customers? And that determines who your real competition is inside that middle force. Let me show you graphically or visually how that looks like. Okay? Let's say your roofings. Okay? Your roofings. And for simplicity's sake, we'll just say they sell 4 things. They sell way more than that, obviously, but let's say 4 things. Steel roofing sheets, guardrails, you know what guardrails are, right? On the highway. Barbed wire, like razor wire, and nails and screws. They sell 4 things. How many business segments do they have? Who said no? Okay, why do you think it's not 4?
Because each of them has different competitors,
Different
different customers.
customers. Okay, that's the key phrase here. So let's just use countries as an example. Okay? You have 4 products which you sell to 6 countries. How many business segments do you have? 4? 44? 24? Yes. 24. You have one segment would be steel roofing sheets sold to Ugandan customers. That's one business segment, because in Uganda you would have competitors, you would have buyers and suppliers, which are different from Rwanda and Tanzania. They would have their 5 forces surrounding them that are usually different from the 5 forces in Uganda. And you need to recognize in that particular connection here who your competition is. If you don't do that, you're vulnerable to surprise attack. Like, oh, I didn't know that. Okay? Every single one is one business segment, which hopefully you can pay attention to. So if you're consulting, right, you can say investment consulting, strategy consulting, management consulting, HR, recruiting consulting. Consulting can mean anything. And if you have, let's say, 3 different consulting services you provide in 2 countries, how many business segments do you have? 6, right? 6. You got that? That's the formula. And each of these 6 takes proper individual research. They have you have your competitors, suppliers, threats, opportunities in each of those business segments. And if you study them, you will finally be able to milk those opportunities and guard yourself against those threats. Too many people say, oh, what industry are you in? Consulting. What's your business segment? Consulting. If they're really good, they're like, oh, well, investment consulting. And you realize they think that they're in one business segment. They're not. Okay? But it gets even better.
Question.
Sorry?
So what's the difference between a business segment and a niche? Because I feel like you're describing more of a niche than a segment.
Okay. What is the difference between a business segment and a niche or niche, right? Depends on which side of the Atlantic you're from. These are all business segments. If there is one business segment that you have a huge advantage on that other people haven't explored, that's a niche. So you could have 24 business segments, and one of them is your special niche or niche. You see what I mean? That's where you have an advantage because other people haven't discovered it yet, or other people have not been able to enter that business segment, but you have, or you can. No?
Because you see, according to Rufus, all these are already existing. They are already safe in different countries. Let's first even remove them. Let's say we are looking at these 4 products, sheets, rails, wire, say to Uganda. So now in Uganda, that means they will be looking, for example, for like that target they are looking for. That's what I think is a niche. So which means in all the different segments they have a niche since they're already selling to the different segments. Unless if
It's a niche that they have already exploited. They're already in, so, but when they were going into it, when they haven't yet entered, let's say, the guardrails industry in Uganda, other people weren't there either. That was a niche, and they occupied it. Okay? Yeah.
Let me try to answer a bit. Let me use another example, maybe a confectionery shop. It has bread. There's a place where I normally buy from. It has donuts, it has pizzas, it has wedding cakes, cookies, and muffins. But they have their special, those are all different segments. When it comes to bread, sometimes I tell myself, I'll not buy from Capital Shoppers. I'll go for their special Sim bread. And I realize their Sim bread gets over very, very fast. It's unique to them, the bread house. So, yeah, so that to me, I think that's their niche. But all these ones, cakes, cookies, donuts, pizzas, are different segments. So at pizza level, they compete with other pizza makers. So that's why all
That's
the
not
other
necessarily
forces,
their niche.
Yes,
Yeah.
all the other forces that affect pizza people, the dough, everything affects them. At maybe wedding cake level, they compete with Bake For Me, they compete with all that at that level. At training, they compete in all that sphere differently. And even at bread, but they find that special uniqueness, the Sim bread, which is really unique. I try to bring it home to another industry. So that special ingredients that you do, sometimes the niche could be the segment or the uniqueness or even the target audience. Could be that these special ones give me a leverage on how I survive.
Yeah. So we can talk directly if you're still confused, but like Ruth said, it's that car advantage, that car specialty that you have. Okay. Either you see that it's there and nobody's taking it, so you go for it. That's your niche. Or time has passed, you already went for it, and you have occupied it. That's your niche. Okay. I've been here for a while. Okay, but that's not going to be good enough for you to find your advantage. Okay, just identifying that you have 24 and some of them are niches and some of them are not, that's not good enough. If you go to a consultant to get you a market segmentation of Uganda for this particular industry, what you normally get are breakdowns like this, which are good, but not good enough. Why? So I intentionally made it 2018, okay? Because the implication is it can't be just one snapshot of a year. It's progressive, but I'll get to, I'll get to that, okay? So in 2018, 4 or 5 years ago, steel, your roofings, this is your sales in 2018. 35 billion in steel roofing, nails and screws, 42. Surprising. Nails and screws is a bigger industry, okay, or a bigger revenue. Barbed wire is 12. Guardrails, 32. But it was 2018. It might have changed, right? Why? The Entebbe Highway was completed. Guardrails would probably go down after that, for example. That's why I made it 2018. And so you'd get a pie chart like this, and you'd probably get another pie chart like that. Sales by country, right? So you would have those 6 countries, and then you start realizing you can't just draw equal lines and say you have 24 business segments. You can start seeing which one is profitable for you. But these two only tell you which products overall are profitable, or not even profitable, make most sales, and which countries make more sales. But it's not telling you which business segment is making more sales. You see what I mean? The sooner you get a hold of, okay, this is the business segment, you're going to have to do way more analysis, and it looks like that. It's the same information in these 2 charts, put into one pie chart, one pile chart, right? And that's too much information. Nobody likes this. It's accurate, right? Steel roofings in Ethiopia, nails and screws in Kenya, 8 billion, 3 billion, 7, but it's too much information. So what am I going to do to really get to know what is my advantage? Who am I? What am I strong at? Etc. All those questions. I'd look at them like this first, okay? Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, Kenya, Ethiopia, Malaysia. Ooh, interesting, right? Interesting. And then I would say eliminate anything that's 19 and below, 19 billion and below, and keep everything that's 20 billion and above. And it would look like that, right? Then you go back to the pie chart and you start realizing your high sales business segment. Other, those are 19 and below. And then you start realizing, whoa, I didn't know this, but the biggest one is guardrails in Ethiopia. You wouldn't have gotten that. Now you know what to focus on. Now you know what to, invest into. Guardrails in Uganda, although the Entebbe Highway is completed and it's, the most expensive highway in the world by kilometer, even that was just 20. Maybe there just weren't enough, there weren't that many guardrails on Entebbe Highway. And actually, to be honest, it's not that long of a highway, right? Steel roofings in Uganda is 30. Oh, I included 17. My bad, okay? But this is palatable, useful information now. And it tells you who you are, where are you, why Malaysia, what is that? Where did that Malaysia thing come in? And, whoa, it's the only Asian country. We need to explore that, right? This is actionable info. My guess is that a lot of, and it's not guardrails or steel roofings, it's nails and screws. My guess is that a lot of the business in Malaysia furnishings and so forth is the nails and screws are made here, right? Maybe, but now you have enough information to ask intelligent questions, research intelligently, and possibly expand that business segment. If you look at the guardrails in Rwanda, okay? Your sales is just very low. Nails and screws, 0, right? Maybe don't even bother. Maybe this is one area you need to retreat and say, okay, it's not worth it. And finally, these are just sales. If you really want to make intelligent decisions, you have to look at profitability. Okay, so you do the same thing, except it's not 30 billion sales, it's of that, how much is profitable? And then you get a completely different pie chart because some of the biggest sales could be, like we just discussed with airlines, could be negative profitability. Okay? So, with the competitive industry, pie charts, business segments, you start having the ability to ask detailed, intelligent questions about this. But then, what do you do about it? Okay? And that's where we're going to get into the other 4 forces. Okay? But a lot of this doesn't even apply to some businesses in Uganda. Why? Because the revenue comes from donations. A lot of it comes from donations. They're supported by grants and so forth. And so I encourage all of you to really ask yourself, before you even go into business segmentation, a unique question for Ugandan businesses, which is, how NGO are you? Okay, because that pie chart, probably 90% of that pie chart might be just donations. Then you have no competitive advantage that you can really play on. If that's you, you got to slowly dial that NGO back so that you have a workable business segmentation pie chart. If that pie chart is donations, you have very little room for strategy. Okay, so we're talking about strategy and business segmentation is good and all that, but if you are heavily NGO, you can't even use it because the revenue source is not from your products, it's from inspiring stories, need, not market need, okay? A great way to know how NGO you are is not just to compare how much you got in donation revenue versus business revenue, but break it down like this. Okay? Your business, the money used this year, startup capital, if you're a startup, operational capital, fixed assets, salaries, brand equity, inventory, intellectual property, blah, 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 blah. This is all my assets. How many of them did I get from donations? Or how much of that I got from donations? How many from first or second party loans? And how many from third party loans? And how many from sales revenue? What's the difference between first and second party loan and third party loan? First or second party is, it came from your pocket, the founder's pocket, or the founder's family's pocket, or the founder's friend's pocket. That's first and second party. Third party is banks, microfinance, and so forth, but not donations. You're paying interest on it. Okay? This is donations. You're not paying interest on it. And then how much did you actually make from business revenue, total, and then if you want to, I can show you the equation here, but it tells you that in this particular case, you're 46% NGO, right? It's math. And if you're 46% NGO, that pie chart would be almost half blank, unusable for strategy. Okay, so go back, first ask how NGO are you, and for the business revenue bit, or sales revenue bit, do a business segmentation. We just went through the strategy, the industry layer, which is similar to the strategic group layer. We'll describe the difference later, but your strategic group is a group inside your strategy, inside your industry, right? We'll discuss that. But anyway, in this 3 last layers. Here you can make strategic decisions that shape the future of your business and which will also have an effect on your competitors' businesses. You are in a position of power and influence and control in the middle 3. Traditional strategic weapons used to fight the battles in these 3 layers include direct confrontation, which would include things like pricing, right? If you price it lower, it's going to affect your competition and how he prices his product. If you price it higher or you match him, okay, that's a direct declaration of war. Differentiation, all right, a little bit different, but there is upward differentiation and downward differentiation. And we'll discuss that tomorrow. Differentiation is not just, oh, it's better. It just means that it is different. It could be less, different in the form of less. Okay? I have a very different worldview when it comes to audio equipment than my friend Vincent, right? He is a professional in that field, and so when we say, hey, we need you to do something, what he wants is, I don't even know what 90% of it is, but it's huge. It's got all these buttons, and he's like, now we're ready. That's upward differentiation. Some people need that. Downward differentiation is this little box here, JBL. I just need literally 5 dials and 1 power button and 1 Bluetooth button. Less is more for me. Okay, so differentiation doesn't necessarily mean more. It just means differently suited for that particular customer in that business segment. And if it's your most profitable business segment, it's worth differentiating to match that segment. If it's not a big, profitable business segment, it might not be worth differentiating to match that segment. Yeah? Misinformation has always been a huge strategic weapon when it comes to direct confrontation. Okay? Information and misinformation. I wish I had more time to tell you more examples, but it's not necessarily even misinformation. It could be using someone's information against them. Information is a huge battle. In the UK, there are 2 direct rival supermarket chains. One's called Tesco, Tesco, and the other one is Tesco and Waitrose. Was it maybe Waitrose or something? I am so sorry. Another, okay? So Sainsbury's, thank you, Sainsbury's. Someone has been to Europe. Okay, so what Tesco did was they said, okay, we're gonna directly confront Sainsbury's. We're gonna pass flyers in the neighborhoods saying we have the lowest price. And if you find something, okay, that is lower than our price, take a photo, take this flyer, and come to our shop, and we will match it. Right? That was a direct attack at Sainsbury's and any supermarket, to be honest. So what did Sainsbury's do? Actually, it wasn't Sainsbury's, it was Asda or let's just say Sainsbury's. I'm sorry. Okay, so what did Sainsbury's do in retaliation, using information against its opponent? It's not unfair. It is highly, highly creative and innovative. So what they did is they went around, they hired people to collect those flyers, and they disseminated it in neighborhoods and regions where Sainsbury's doesn't exist, but Tesco does. What happened is, even in regions where Tesco's doesn't have to directly confront Sainsbury's, people take those flyers, go to Tesco, right, and provide photos, In other words, even in areas where they're not directly confronting each other, Tesco's had to drop all their prices. Are you following me? Is that fair? Is that clean? Yeah, it's not unclean. Okay, but you can use information to fight this battle too. Legal, yeah, you all know, legal battle, direct confrontation. But there are others that are not directly confrontational. Yeah.
I have a feeling differentiation is a bit indirect.
Yeah.
It doesn't awaken the competitor so fast. Like pricing, what would you do if bread dropped to 1,500? Would all say, after it's all bread, we run to that person. And
Is that pricing or differentiation?
pricing.
Pricing, okay.
But differentiation is a way of modifying and meeting target audience, which is a bit indirect to me.
In the immediate future. But if you start differentiating and you let that go for a year, 2 years, people have to either catch up or differentiate in a different direction for targeting a different business segment. They have to respond. If not sooner, then definitely later. So it is a move on the chessboard, on the battlefield, that is going to sooner or later warrant a response from your competitors or competitor. Okay, we'll discuss this tomorrow, but there are others that are not directly confrontational: blue ocean expansion, blue ocean strategy, preemptive retreat. We'll discuss that. And then wait. There's something called first mover advantage. I'm sure you've all heard of that. But you know what? History has told us that maybe it's not that big of an advantage. Second movers usually win. Okay? The first companies to go into electric cars doesn't hit it. It's the second one that learns from its mistakes, learns about opportunities, like, oh, it should have done that. In retrospect, hindsight is 20/20. Like, oh, they didn't make it, but if they had done this and this, what do? They go to an investor, a bigger investor, and say, so we're going to do that, but we're going to change this. They have already told 90% of your pitch. You just have to change it, and you follow. What happens? The market has already sensitized you're not the first, so you don't have to evangelize. You just have to make it better and sexier, and people are already familiar with it. So sometimes indirect confrontation includes just waiting for the first guy to fail. Outlasting. Okay? So these are traditional, these and many more are traditional strategic weapons used in the industry or strategic group level. There are many more. You can be creative, like the Sainsbury's and Tesco one. It's not like on a list. It's just pure creativity of how to fight. So this is not an exhaustive list. Yes?
Now that you mentioned Tesco, I have an interesting story, and I guess many of you might know it. So the first African-owned coffee brand was
Good African coffee. Yeah.
got to get listed and stocked in Tesco. And
Oh.
that was done by Andrew Garcia. A couple of men know. That was an achievement like no other. Nobody has done it again unless you come from his class and his. And the fact that Andrew was able to do it should tell us that, and I am serious, the first African-owned brand, not from Nigeria, not from South Africa, not from Kenya, but from Uganda,
Amen to that. Amen to that. There is always hope. There is always opportunity. Thank you, Charles. Okay, so actually following on Charles' thing there, though, I want to remember this. I want to remember this. 2 Corinthians 10, 3-4. Those were traditional strategic weapons. And I'm not saying don't use them, right? But use them with this in mind, that in the industry layer, though you may be fighting competition, the industry layer is part of, for you, the industry layer is part of the kingdom layer. It is part of your kingdom effort. And that means overall, as Paul says in Corinthians, for though we walk in the flesh, for though we walk in the industry layer and we fight in the industry layer, we are not waging war according to the rules of traditional industry layer weaponry. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds, to change the rules. Remember, we talked about how to fight an enemy that's bigger than you or stronger than you. A lot of it is don't fight according to their rules. Well, in our case, we're blessed because we have other rules already from God. You think, okay, so I'm going to read the Bible, I'm going to study more about the industry layer. Not quite. What we're saying is you have the operative word being divine. Divine means not of this world, right? In other words, God is going to help you in ways that, and no weapons can help you, but also the devil will spiritually try to destroy your business, sowing division, right? Causing supernatural force majeure kind of, destructive forces against your business simply because you are a kingdom business. He wouldn't do that to others, but he would do that to you. So, in other words, although this sounds great, we have divine weapons, but we also have divine enemies. We have to know what we're fighting is a battle to create these triple bottom lines in our businesses. So what is kingdom weapons? What is a kingdom weapon? What is a divine weapon? Love. In each of these three layers, remaining layers, you can create love. And love is always going to win. Okay? You think, suddenly after all this technicality, June's gone soft. Well, no, that's a divine weapon. But actually, if you want to, you can technically, mathematically break that down. And we'll do that today and tomorrow. I wish Christians owned this phrase and not hippies and people advocating for sexual freedom. Who knows this? During the Vietnam War, the Beatles, make love, not war. During a pointless war being fought by America in Vietnam, or depends on how you see it, of course. People were dying, their sons are dying, husbands are dying, brothers are dying in Vietnam for a war that they really at home didn't understand. And that led to an opposition in America saying, don't make war, make love. Okay? So there's a side point, but I wish we can own this and redeem this phrase. In the industry layer, we are in a war, but if we're going to fight it with divine weapons, I'm not saying don't fight it with traditional weapons, but you need to use a divine weapon. The quintessential divine weapon is love. These three layers, in these three layers, just, after all that technicality, access that soft part of the brain, the fuzzy part of your brain, and just remember this. These three layers, you can make decisions. So ask yourself, how do I use my kingdom business to create love? And you will be surprised that that is going to grow your business, not just supernaturally and divinely, but people react to love long term better than they react to hate or attack short term. Okay, so since we're talking about a 40-year time frame, love is going to be the more powerful weapon. So how? How do we create love? Now, we're going to go into this slowly. I'm not going to give you, okay, how to create love here. Okay, you have to break this down slowly, and so follow me and try to understand. If you have questions, please ask me later, because I'm going to slowly walk you through without, hopefully, interruption. Now, imagine this. You're in a competitive industry. You have competition. People want you to fail. There are second movers waiting for you as a first mover to fail so that they can fill your shoes, right? There is ShopRite waiting for Nakama to fail, and then there is Carrefour waiting for ShopRite to fail so they can move in and make something better. It's everywhere. But one part of love, what is love? They say relationships, right? Husband, wife. One of the biggest destructive forces in that love relationship is when you lose the respect for that person. Respect. So let's talk about respect. If there is mutual respect amongst the competitors, even the fighting with traditional weapons is going to be done in a way that elevates the industry, not destroys the industry. And if we're building the kingdom and redeeming the kingdom, that's rule number one. We fight to build, right? We don't fight to destroy. How do we do that? Well, think about this. You can share or sell amongst competitors these things and more profitably. You can sell or share equipment, knowledge, research and data. You can share talent, time, risk. You can buy and sell market opportunity. You can buy and sell clientele and customers, actually. You can buy and you can allocate costs. You can even share revenue profitably. In a competitive environment where the main players, hopefully one day, are Christians, they respect each other, the competition itself is going to elevate the industry. And that is how we want to fight. Remember the pasta tower, right? Remember the pasta tower. Oh, some of you weren't there, right? Okay, sorry. But the pasta tower, if you were there, you remember, you can build a giant pasta tower if you did some of these things. Right? That's one example. Competitors, by the way, are your best potential customers. Why? Because they have the exact same need as you. They also have the exact same opportunities, threats, strengths, and possibly weaknesses as you. And so whatever you need, they're probably going to be in need of too. Whatever you're strong at, they're probably strong at too. Whatever is causing a threat to your industry or your company is probably a threat to them too. That is what a competitor is, right? In a sense, they're brothers. So when people fight amongst competitors, and you should, because with respect, the harder you fight, the better the industry, right? If Toyota and Nissan were like, oh no, we're just happy, we don't need to compete, you wouldn't have the cars you have today. They are cutthroat, ruthless competitors, and that's why we have better cars today. Okay? There was a, yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with this because I'm a Christian, but I would want to know how practical it can be.
Okay.
For example, like, do you have examples of companies that have done this?
Sure.
So the example I wanted us to share on is between Coca-Cola and Reham Cola.
And what cola? Reham? Yeah.
I watched Reham Cola come up, and I was part of Coca-Cola, and I know how it came up, and I'm not supposed to share the information, but this guy took their details, created the same product, and took them off the market. So I want to know if I was Coca-Cola, and I would want to use
Wait, Coca-Cola bought out Reham Cola? I don't think so. The other way around, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, they haven't destroyed.
Someone defected and created Reham Cola.
Oh, yeah,
You've understood.
yeah,
One was born out of the other,
yeah.
indirectly, I should say, and it became a very strong company.
And competitor.
Competed with and actually affected this company's revenue. Like it was like a hit. This guy came out strategically. So if I was Coca-Cola in this case, I would want to know how I would respond.
Fight back.
Not fight back.
Yeah, no, fight back. You should fight back. Yeah.
But the real one is fight back. Yeah. How I would share my talent with them because they've already stolen my knowledge now. Like, oh guys, here is my
Yeah.
talent.
Thank you. Yeah. Don't shy away from these words, guys. I think when we try to beautify it, you start losing. You have to fight back. Don't be like Putin and call this invasion a military operation or a military response, right? It's retaliation, it's offensive, it's invasion. And in this case, I don't think they were kingdom businesses necessarily. I don't know, I'm just saying. And so what would I have done as Coca-Cola? The attack was deliberate. I don't know if it was legal. If he's in breach of contract, then I would fight back legally. But in Uganda, by the way, having that paper is not that helpful. In fact, in any part of the world, it's not that helpful. Why? Because it only helps you if you get into a court battle, right? If you get into a court battle. It helps you if you get into a court battle, having that, what do you call it, patent. Okay? The patent is not going to deter someone who is already willing to break the law. He's going to go ahead and do it, and he'll apologize later in court if.
You can even pay for damages, but you continue.
Yeah. So patents could be a one way to go, but I don't think it's a strong one. I don't know. But let me think on that.
Thank you. I have an interesting example, just to answer her. Football clubs, the ones that we watch a lot in England, sell talent to each other.
Yeah.
They are competitors, they all want the prize, but they share players. So the highest bidder can buy from the other club a
Yeah.
new player.
And that's how they became so big
Yeah.
as an industry.
So at the end of the day, it's a different industry, but I would think
Because I'm looking at how practical.
Okay. Guys, can I ask you to, we don't have much time today. We only have 2 more days left. But let's bring it down to earth for a minute. There's Coca-Cola, there's football clubs, Manchester United. For me, no, go Gunners. But let's bring it down to an entrepreneur here who came to one of our boot camps once. Okay? It was during COVID. He manages maize silos, and he has trucks that off-take it from farms, transport it, and back and forth, right? During COVID, business died. He had no income. What did he do? He went to his competitors who did have income, just because I guess they were connected to the right buyer, and he said, look, I have a silo, would you like to rent? I have a truck. And he sold his fleet of trucks to those guys, to the competitors. He knows they need it, the same industry. That's how he survived COVID and used that money to build another business that is COVID friendly. Well, not quite. His new business is also in that industry, but he shifted a little bit, right? But that's because he sold the entire fleet. He didn't have to, right? I'm just saying, even if you're competitors and you say, okay, I need a little bit more cash, $10,000 to $20,000, that's one truck. Somebody needs it now. My truck is not making me any money. I sell it. If I have that truck on loan, I sell the loan to him. Now I don't have to pay the loan, right? So within competition, there is plenty of opportunity to cooperate if you are mutually respectful. Asia Africa Investment Company, the fund in Japan and Singapore, and Avoda, consultancy, we do the exact same thing in Uganda. We could have competed. But no, we joined forces. Okay? And we're even inviting one of their directors to be on the board.
In Uganda.
Exact same. We were bidding for the same projects for the that's offered by the Japanese government, right? But we're like, instead of Avoda's bidding for 100% of the money, and they're bidding again also for 100% of the money, let's have dinner. At 50-50, we are a stronger bid now. And that's how we got our projects, right? And it wasn't just AAIC. This is public knowledge. It's a finished project, so you can. So KPMG, Rakuten, you know Rakuten? Barcelona, on their jersey, you see Rakuten, right? It's a massive Japanese company. We were all bidding for the same project from the Japanese government. But instead, we said, we'll just team up. Suddenly, the bid became unbeatable because it was, Avoda, KPMG, AAIC, and Rakuten in one bid. Yeah, we had to split it 4 ways, but because we did it so well, it just keeps coming and suddenly becomes like a base for all for us, for years and years and years. So competition has to be used strategically. And with respect, with people who, competitors who mutually respect each other, the opportunities are very different from ones who are trying to destroy each other. Okay? So as a kingdom business, however, this is the thing. Today's devotional was about this, love. How do you spread love? You have to be the one, as a Christian business, to take the risk. You have to be the first one to say, all right, if I tell my competitors that I'm bidding for this project, I'm giving information away. And I'm at risk, actually, right? But be the one to take the risk first, like Jesus did. If he is worth it, if that competitor you think is worth it, is a respectful competitor, be the one that says, all right, I will offer. Don't wait for them. I will offer. That's the thing, love always includes risk. Okay, but it makes the industry better if it's a respectful competitor who is willing to work for you or buy from you or sell to you or give talent to you, share office space with you because you're all both operating in the same location, right? Refer clients to you. They keep 15%, you get 85%. Data, research, AIC gave us all their research. We're giving them all their research. And we do a better job because of that. Okay, so there's a lot you can do because he's a competitor. Because he's a competitor, he has the same needs. I don't know if I can take. There's a lot of hands. I knew this would happen today. Seconds, yeah. Are you? Yeah.
I love reading Sun Tzu. He's good at strategy. But he said that in one of his things is that we can subdue the enemy without necessarily fighting. So we can work with alliances. In the medical, it happens a lot. You cannot be so good at everything. Even that baker I talked of, it cannot be so good at everything. So we can make an alliance with competition whereby we refer. I'm personally not good with children at all. So
neither am I.
Not good at treating them. I definitely refer to people who are very good. And then there are people who are not good at certain things.
Yeah.
So we can, in a way, coexist.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. Okay, Isaac, you haven't spoken today. Seconds. Let's go.
Just a quick question. We are sheep among wolves, and the business world is so diverse. And this is interesting, but how can we really act in competition with
Wolves.
secular business or the wolves?
Okay. These are all questions that will be answered if you wait. Okay. Which is why I said, let me go to the end, and then you ask questions if it hasn't been answered yet, okay? But exactly, you're sheep and you're competing with wolves. How can you possibly do that, right? It's a real problem. It's a real issue. Okay, so we will get there if we can make it. I think this may be. Okay, even amongst the biggest wolves out there, you can see that. Did you know that Mitsubishi, Pajero, they own 34% of Nissan, their direct competitor, and Renault in France owns 15% of Nissan, and then this joint venture called Renault Nissan Mitsubishi owns 50% of Renault and 50% of Nissan. These are direct competitors who have sort of helped each other out when they needed cash. But also, in this case, they are wolves. They are controlling each other. Okay? So that last bit is up for more technical discussion. But my point is, even amongst the biggest secular businesses out there, competitors do cooperate. I do wish we saw more of that in Christian businesses and in Christian businesses here. Very often, competitors are just 180 competitors, and it's a zero-sum relationship. And that's not true even in some of the biggest secular businesses in the world. Okay, that's just the point I'm trying to make here. This was all nice and good for 30 years, and then in the 40th year, 40 is a very interesting number. And by the way, this is 40 years back, okay? And 40 years in the wilderness, 40 days of, 40 is an interesting, sometimes you realize maybe there's a God who likes to impress us with how minutely he can control history, and it's reassuring. But anyway, for 30 years, this structure was fine. Until what happened? There was suspicion, infighting, and so forth regarding the CEO, joint CEO of Nissan, who was also CEO of Renault. Okay? And then he was Lebanese, French. The Japanese didn't like that, I guess, and started to sow division. We actually don't know what happened, but basically, he got imprisoned. The Japanese government arrested him, someone who has really contributed to Japanese economy. Nissan was dying when he took the helm. I don't know if some of you remember. They didn't make it really good cars, and then he really turned it around, and then he was arrested by that government. And he had to escape via help from former US Marines from Japanese prison in a music equipment box in a private jet. It's a dramatic story. You can watch it on Netflix. That was around year 40. Okay, 30 years was fine and then went downhill. So secular businesses compete respectfully, they cooperate, but even in secular businesses, distrust, suspicion, division, jealousy causes the downfall. Loss of respect, in other words, right? Okay, now we're going to look at how exactly sheep can compete with wolves. And this is the key thing to understand, because so often we're just competing with our eyes locked inside our competitive industry. And that's why sheep cannot fight with wolves. If you put them in a sheep and a wolf in a cage and tell them to fight, the sheep will die. There's no way it can beat the wolf. But what if there is no cage and there are other players who are not necessarily your competitors also in the equation. Suddenly, it's not you and the wolf. There's another one, potential entrant eyeing. There's another one there, right? There's someone who's saying, maybe, a substitute, right? Let's eat grass. Or let's eat tofu. Suddenly dismantling the conflict, right? There are people who are saying, oh, no, it's okay, I'm going to buy this sheep. There are other players now. Suddenly, with strategy, sheep can fight wolves. If you put them in a cage, you can't fight. I mean, you will die. You become mutton, right? So it's worth looking at the other forces, very worth looking at the forces for us to be good, respectful competitors in that industry that build them up. We might find a way as sheep to run faster. I don't know, I'm just making this up, right? Run faster. What happens? The wolf also learns to run faster because he has to catch up with you. But you can't do it in the cage. You have to have a big landscape. Or you start thinking, okay, how do I beef up? I don't know, I'm making all of this up, right? But whatever you do, the wolf has to respond. And it's much easier for you to be creative about how to face the wolf if you're not just looking inside the cage. Okay? So we don't have a lot of time. I guess we're going to have to go overtime into tomorrow. But let's talk about each of these forces briefly. Okay? They're not as urgent as the competition in the cage, but they're definitely going to affect that battle. The first one is the threat of new entrants. Threat of new entrants. It's a threat, but depending on which side you are, maybe if you're the sheep, either it is another person coming to eat you, now you have two competitors, or it could be another sheep, a juicier sheep, who is slower, right? It presents opportunity and threat, or threat. Now, the defining, let's say, weapon for new entrants obviously is barriers, the walls, right? Depends on whether you're the one in the cage, you're the one losing, or you're the one winning. You're the one with advantage, or you're the one with the disadvantage. Depending on which side you're on, you might want to set up defenses so other people can't get in, or you want to destroy those defenses so other people can get in and share the battle. Right? So it's not like, okay, I need to set up barriers of entry immediately. You all know what barriers of entry is, hopefully. Obstacles that prevent new competitors from easily entering an industry or area of business or business segment. High barriers of entry means it's difficult to get into the area of business or the business segment, but more protected from competition. Low barriers of entry means easy to get into the area of business, but the first thing you probably have to do, if there's nobody else in there, you raise the barriers. But if you're fighting already in there, you have to think a little bit more flexibly. Examples of these walls would be economies of scale. That's a huge barrier, right? You say, okay, I'm going to start making these nice plastic chairs, and I'm going to compete with Nice House of Plastics. You probably can't, right? You can't deliver these chairs with as much quality and cheaper. It's not possible because they have economies of scale. They produce so many that they can actually take a lower average, okay, on their price. Incumbency, they've been there the longer someone's been there, normally that is a barrier, right? Because you're already connected with the customers of that segment. And a new person has to find ways of developing new customers. Switching costs is a very interesting one. For example, if I'm roofings, right? I have been using a certain density of aluminium, to make my steel pipes for 30 years. Now, another aluminum supplier says, please buy from us instead. But it's a different density. The switching cost for me is I need to change my machinery to adjust to this new density. For me, that could be a cost. That is a barrier of entry for him, not me, right? For the new guy. It's like we can't match that density, but here it is. It's softer or it's harder. But then as roofings, I would say no, the switching cost is too high. That's a barrier of entry, etc. Capital requirements, obviously, policy, expected retaliation. You know, if you're the small guy and you're like, I'm going to compete, but the barrier is, if I do this, I'm going to do this and he's going to, right, uppercut and I'm dead, right? Expected retaliation and access to distribution, etc., etc. These are barriers of entry. So these, again, are things that you would either raise or lower, depending on whether you're winning the battle, losing, you have advantage or disadvantage. Okay? These are also people, new entrants are people that you might want to get on your side. Okay? Or if, deviously, you know that they are a bad player, you could use misinformation to make sure they team up with your competition. It's been done before. I'm not saying do it, but there are so many ways to use new entrants. If you have been in that industry for some time and there's a new entrant coming in, most of the time you can completely exploit them. Now, if you're a Christian business and a kingdom business, maybe you wouldn't exploit them. How do you love them and respect them and grow together, even if you have to fight sometimes? Okay? So these are some weapons that you can use that are kingdom weapons as well as physical weapons. Now we're going to have to stop there. But tomorrow, I hope I'm going to answer all your questions. If you allow me to go very fast in the first 20 minutes. Once we get here, I think it's going to blow your mind. Absolutely blow your mind about the weapons available for you to compete in a respectful Christian way that builds the industry. And in all of it, your competitors are the most necessary things to help you grow. It's going to blow your mind. So I hope to blow your mind tomorrow.